Okay, welcome everybody to today's class. Today, again, we're looking at advanced idioms and phrasal verbs. Now, I do have a book I can recommend on this subject because it's my book, and I show you it at the start of every class. So I'm sorry I didn't get this ready beforehand. Here it is. You can get this on my website, skype-lessons.com, or on Amazon. So please, if you're interested in phrasal verbs, I think all of the phrasal verbs on this board today are in this book. But these phrasal verbs and idioms I'm taking from a book by Oxford University Press. If you look for it on Amazon or Google, you'll find it. It's called Advanced Idioms and Phrasal Verbs. And so this is the same vocabulary. If you go and find that book or buy that book, I recommend it. You can use it with these classes. And you can use my other phrasal verb videos for this book if you want to get it. And so it's on my website, skypelessons.com. Now, we're going to start with wind somebody up today. In fact, all of the phrasal verbs in today's lesson, they all seem to be related to emotions. And I'm a very emotional person, and I think if anybody's been watching this channel for some time, they'll realise that I'm quite an emotional person, that I find it quite difficult to keep my emotions in check. I find it quite difficult to rein them in. There's another good phrasal verb, rein something in. It means control or restrain something. I'm not sure why, but I think we often think of the emotions and our instincts, we often think of them metaphorically as horses. And this is certainly a horsey phrasal verb because the reins are the things you use to control the horse. And so if you get carried away, where's get carried away? Here it is. We've done this one before. If you get carried away by your emotions, I have this image in my head of you being carried away by the horse, and the horse symbolizes your emotions or your instincts. I think it's very common in literature and in art that our emotions, our instincts are symbolized by horses. I'm not sure why. Okay, so all of today's phrasal verbs are about emotions. So to wind somebody up means to irritate somebody. This is one of the meanings of wind somebody up. If you wind someone up, if there's a somebody in there, it must mean irritate somebody, annoy them, make them angry in some kind of way. And I've got it again over here. We will mention this one more time. So wind somebody up means to irritate somebody. And it's exactly the same as another expression, to rub somebody up the wrong way. I quite like this expression. We have a few phrasal verbs with this rub, or a few idiomatic expressions. And if you rub someone up the wrong way, you wind them up, you annoy them, you irritate them. Now, don't get this one mixed up with another rub phrasal verb, which is to rub off on somebody, which is where somebody's behaviour changes because they're constantly exposed to somebody else's good behaviour or bad behaviour, and that good behaviour or bad behaviour rubs off on them. It gets transferred from one person to another. So if anybody out there is a parent, I think most parents would like their children to find a nice group of other children, well-behaved children, polite children, so that that politeness, that good behaviour will rub off on their own children, hopefully. Yeah, and so by repeatedly hanging around with these good kids, parents hope that the good behaviour will rub off on their own children. So that's a little bit different, that one. It's certainly very different from rub someone up the wrong way. But please don't forget that wind up has a second meaning. When it's not wind somebody up, when it's just wind up, it means to end up, to finish up. So if you say something like, my son went on holiday last week and he had a great time, but by the third day he wound up in hospital. He ended up in hospital with food poisoning. Perhaps the food wasn't great quality and he wound up in hospital. It just means end up in hospital, finish up in hospital. Now, if you go off the deep end, you lose control of your emotions. You get carried away, and specifically, you lose control of your anger. You let your anger flares up. You become angry. You suddenly lose control. So please remember, go off the deep end. It's when you lose control of yourself, you get angry. And perhaps when you get angry, you scream your head off, you shout your head off, yeah? These expressions are idiomatic and they just mean to scream and shout a lot. And if you laugh your head off, well, you're laughing a lot, aren't you? Laugh your head off would be the opposite of something like cry your eyes out or bawl your eyes out, which was in the previous lesson. So all of these are really common. I promise you will come across most of these expressions if you're speaking to English people or reading English books or watching English TV. Now, stir something up, conjure something up, summon something up. This means that something has called up, you can even use call something up, something has brought forth memories or emotions. And so you might say that the smell of paint summons up memories of my childhood. I don't know why I associate that smell of paint with my childhood. Perhaps I smelt a lot of paint in my childhood. But yeah, it summons up memories of my childhood. Or perhaps somebody's behavior stirs up your anger. Yeah, it could, meaning it brings it forth. It calls it up. It calls up your anger. It makes you get angry, basically. If something stirs up your anger, it makes you get angry. So yeah, it could stir up your anger, but it could stir something else up. It could stir up warm feelings just as much as angry feelings. It doesn't have to be angry, but it often is, I must admit. And I think that this stirrer, I can think of a few other words with stirrer. When somebody stirs something up, it might mean that they're trying to cause a conflict or a fight somewhere. There is a rude word that I could use here, and I don't think there are any kids out there, so I'm going to say it. We do say a shit stirrer, meaning somebody who likes to cause arguments and fights between other people. So that's related to stir something up. If somebody's stirring up trouble or stirring up a fight, it can also be used in that way. But it's often used for memories and emotions, when something stirs up your memories or stirs up your emotions. Okay, to take something in means to absorb information. So I hope that you're all taking in all of these phrasal verbs and idioms. And I hope that when they sink in, it's very similar phrasal verb here, when these phrasal verbs sink in, you'll be able to use them fluently. So yeah, to take something in can mean to absorb information. It can even mean to take in nutrients into the body, and that's why intake, you can talk about nutritional intake, and we've done that in another class. But it could also mean accept information, difficult information. So perhaps a lot of upsetting things have happened in your life recently, and you find it very difficult to take it all in. And that means you find it very difficult to accept that all of these things have happened. You find it very difficult to deal with all of these events. You find it very difficult to come to terms with all of these events. So to take something in can mean to come to terms with something, to deal with something. It does have that other meaning as well. And this is the problem with phrasal verbs and idioms. There are many nuances of meaning, many different ways in which they are used. Okay, to take sides means to choose or pick a side. You could also say that, to choose a side, to pick a side. And it means to pick a side in the argument, in the debate, or to choose a side in the argument or in the debate or in the conflict. You can also remember the following two phrasal verbs because they're exactly the same. To side with somebody. Yeah, and so if you side with one particular group, that means you argue in their favour, you join them. But if you side against a particular group, you argue against them, you disagree with them. So you might say that all the time we hear about Brexit, right, in the newspapers, and this particular topic has meant that a lot of people have taken sides. They've either sided with the European Union or sided against the European Union. So that's perhaps a good or a very typical situation where you might see people taking sides and they're either siding with or against. Okay, on an even keel, this is 100% idiomatic and it's a sailing expression. I think the keel of the boat, I'm not a sailor, I'm not completely sure, but I think the keel of the boat is the heavy weight that keeps it upright. And so even in a storm, it doesn't go too far to the left and right. It just stays upright, even when there's really powerful waves and things like that. And so if things are running on an even keel, that means they're going smoothly. We often say to go smoothly. Are things going smoothly? If the business is going smoothly, if things are going smoothly, it means everything is well balanced, regular, predictable, it's going well. But if things are not running on an even keel, it sounds like there's stormy weather and it's very unpredictable what might happen. Sudden changes might happen that spoil everything. And so this is a positive expression, certainly. If things are running on an even keel, then they're running smoothly. And hopefully, if there's not too much conflict and not too many problems in your life, then things will be going smoothly. Things will be running on an even keel. So you probably have something similar in your own language, which means to run smoothly, to go smoothly, where things are not rocking back and forth, things are not in a dangerous position. Okay, that's easier said than done. Very common expression. Normally you just hear this, easier said than done. Sometimes we don't even say the that's. Easier said than done. And it just means that that's very easy to say, but not so easy to do. I mean, it means what it says it means, really. So this is quite a common one. And I think it's quite easy to understand what that means. Yeah, easier said than done. A lot of people talk a lot, yeah, but they don't act. And this is because it's much easier to talk about things, to talk about doing good things, or to talk about great plans than to actually achieve those plans. And so I would always recommend, yeah, not spending too much energy on talking, but putting more of your energy into doing. Okay, to be dying for something, for plus noun, or to be dying to do something, to plus verb. Very useful to remember that. For plus noun, to plus verb. It's very common. So if you're dying for a drink, maybe it's a really hot day and you're dying for a beer, something like that. Or it's a really hot day and you're dying to go for a swim. Yeah, something like that. Or it's a really hot day and you're dying to drink a glass of water. So I think a lot of people know these dying idiomatic expressions. There are loads of them involving murder, death and dying. Like, I could murder a beer. You could say that as well, meaning I really want a beer. I'm dying for a beer. And there are a few with death as well. Or die. I can't think of them at the moment, but there are a lot of idiomatic expressions with dying, death and murder. You can say the traffic is murder, so meaning there's lots and lots of traffic. So there are a lot with that one in particular. To have a go at somebody means to tell somebody off, to shout at somebody, and yeah, to really be angry with them and let them know about it. Tell them why you're angry. Have a go at them. So maybe you've done something wrong at work. Maybe you keep turning up late for work and the boss has a go at you. And it sounds really quite violent and it sounds like he's perhaps shouting at you, something like that. And you might lose your job if he's having a go at you. He may decide to let you go. He may decide to get rid of you, to sack you. Okay, but maybe you're the one who's angry and you decide to have it out with the boss. Perhaps he gave somebody else the promotion that you wanted and that you believe you deserved. And so you decide to have it out with the boss. And that just means you decide to go into the boss's office and say to him, look, I'm not happy. That promotion was for me. What are you going to do about it? I'm going to leave the company if you're not going to give that promotion to me. So when you have it out with somebody, you go and talk to them about something, some problem that's really bothering you and that you think they should solve or that it's their responsibility to solve. And so to have it out with somebody, it means, yeah, to get this problem right out there in the open and discuss it. And force them to discuss it, because maybe they don't want to, but you decide, no, I'm going to have it out with them. I'm going to put the problem on the table so that we can deal with it and get it sorted. Okay, to flare up. Lots of things can flare up. Yeah, sick to death is another good expression. That's a good one, Marsha. Excellent. Now, lots of things can flare up. Sometimes my rash flares up and it just means that it comes back. So I don't know why I've got something like hives this year where every now and then the rash flares up. This particular skin problem flares up. And you can see it on some of these videos. But flare up can also mean your anger. If somebody flares up, if someone flares up and not a rash, if somebody flares up, then they become angry. Okay? If they flare up, they become angry. But violence can flare up. Disease, like rashes, can flare up. You can break out in a rash. Yeah, remember this, break out in a rash. And diseases can flare up, so it just means when a disease comes back. But war can flare up as well, and you ought to remember the phrasal verb break out for these three, because violence breaks out, war breaks out, an epidemic breaks out, and all three of them flare up as well. Violence flares up, disease flares up, and war flares up. So very similar to break out. Now, cool somebody down. Maybe you're just really hot, you've been playing football for an hour or so, and you pour water all over your head in order to cool down. This would be the opposite of warm something up. Remember that you can warm something up or heat something up in the microwave, but you can also warm up by putting a jumper on. I've put a jumper on today because it's September, and that means that this shed is a little bit colder than usual, and so I've put on a jumper in order to warm myself up. But cool somebody down could mean calm somebody down, relax somebody, make them feel more peaceful, make them feel more relaxed than they are. And so this calm somebody down would be the opposite of to work somebody up. If you work somebody up, it's the same as wind somebody up. You make them get really cross and you do things which annoy them. You push the right buttons, we say. Don't know why we use that expression, but to push somebody's buttons, push the right buttons, means to wind them up. It means to understand that person's weaknesses or understand the little things that really annoy that person, and you push their buttons in order to work them up, in order to wind them up, in order to make them really cross and really angry. Young people do this with their I think children do this with their older and younger brothers and sisters. They know how to tease them, how to annoy them. They know which buttons to press. They know exactly how to wind that person up. And so they work their little brother up into or you can say they work their little brother into a state. They work their little brother into a frenzy. And this means to keep annoying them and annoying them and annoying them until they completely lose control, they get carried away and they go off the deep end. Okay, so these two would be the opposite of to relax somebody, to calm them down. This means to make somebody more and more nervous and anxious and annoyed and angry until they finally, you work them into a frenzy, and a frenzy is a really uncontrolled burst of emotion. Okay, so yeah, to work somebody into a state, to work somebody into a frenzy, it means to get them really cross, really angry. And it's slowly, it's step by step, and it's when you know which buttons to press. So remember this expression, to push somebody's buttons. And when you know which buttons to press, you know how to make them angry or cross or annoyed. Okay, so it's important that we all control our emotions, but still, as I said at the start, I actually find this very difficult to do. So we should all keep our anger in check. We should all hold our anger back. We should all rein our anger in. And all of these mean to control or restrain ourselves, to control or restrain our emotions in particular. But you can also keep somebody in check. And that means to control or restrain that person. So parents must keep their kids in check. They must control them, restrain them, and make sure that they don't go off the rails. There's another idiom which is very useful, and I think this one will appear in a future class, to go off the rails, because it means it means when very often a young person, when they go off the rails, they lose control of themselves and start behaving really badly. Maybe they get mixed up with a bad crowd. Yeah, they find a new bad group of friends and the bad behavior rubs off on them, and then they go off the rails. Yeah, it's a train expression, this. When the train goes off the rails, it's lost control. And when a person goes off the rails, they lose control and they suddenly start behaving badly. It can happen to an adult as well. Perhaps the adult loses his job, loses his family, you know, his wife divorces him, his boss sacks him, and then he goes off the rails, becomes an alcoholic, he can't keep his drinking in check, he's gone off the rails. Okay, lastly, if you pour your heart out to somebody, it means you tell them your life story and all the emotional parts of it. It means you tell them everything that's bothering you at that time. And it could be some kind of long emotional story. You're pouring your heart out to that person. So maybe you've been having arguments with your partner. Maybe your relationship is on the rocks. There's another good expression. If maybe your relationship is going through a sticky patch, yeah, we can say that as well, because I think that came up in another lesson. I'm trying to repeat all these idioms and phrasal verbs, but maybe your relationship is on the rocks. Relationship on the rocks. Maybe you are going through a sticky patch and you decide to pour your heart out to your friend because that helps you to release some of this emotional energy. If you don't release it, then you're bottling up your emotions. We say to bottle up your emotions, and this means not to release those emotions. And this can be quite negative, especially, well, I don't think it's negative necessarily, but I think that in the modern world, especially on TV and in the media, you normally see this in a negative light, as if it's very bad to bottle up your emotions. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's actually part of being an adult that you need to sometimes bottle up your emotions, that you need to keep them in check. So yeah, if you're going through a sticky patch or a rough patch, that means you're having a very difficult period of time in your relationship. It's usually about relationships, both of those two. Now, when you pour your heart out to somebody, you're turning to that person for advice. Really, you're turning to them for advice. So remember, turn to somebody, the opposite of turn somebody away, where you reject them and don't even let them in the house. But you could also say to confide in somebody. So maybe you have a lovely auntie who you really get on with and you confide in that person. Maybe it's a cousin, maybe it's an auntie, maybe it's a very close friend, but that's the person who you confide in, who you pour your heart out to. Okay, I think that's all we've got for today. I think for a change, I haven't forgotten anything on the board, because I know sometimes I do forget some things on the board, but I hope that's all been useful for you. If you have any questions, please put them under the video about any of these words. If you like this kind of vocabulary, there's loads in here. I really do mean it. There's lots, and it's lots and lots of pictures to really help you get the subtle nuances. So if you're interested in buying this book, just go to skypelessons.com and you can find a PDF there, colour with hyperlinks, so that you can get to the answers nice and easily. And that's £20. But if you prefer a physical copy, I totally understand. A black and white copy is available on Amazon for £20 or a colour copy for £35. But no, it's just phrasal verbs. This is just phrasal verbs, this one. Although it does have some more idiomatic ones, like have it out with somebody. I took that from here, being honest. That one's not in the advanced phrasal verbs book. It's in my book. So if anybody's interested in buying that, please do. And I'm hoping that I find the free time before Christmas to start writing another book on a similar theme. So if you're interested in all of these, then please watch this space, and hopefully I'll be able to bring out another book soon where you can do some more practice. Okay, thanks everybody for watching. I really appreciate all of your support, and I hope to see you all soon.